with hundreds of millions of people across the planet under quarantine, what are some of the most common psychological occurrences that might happen when people are in lockdown?
Yeah, so I think as we would expect, right? Depression and anxiety are at an all-time high for people. We're seeing increased rates. It's very common. I think long-term, we're actually going to see PTSD. My team and I were already starting to see some of that, especially with frontline healthcare workers. And those pieces, difficulty sleeping. I mean, the insomnia, and people, I think, are even starting to just report having like vivid dreams, and those pieces, that's very common. For a variety of reasons. We have anxiety. We don't know what's happening. Our lives have changed. So those are kind of the clinical irritability. I think people are also often reporting more anger, even if they weren't like an angry person. They're like, why am I so irritated? Well, because your life has turned upside down and you're getting mixed messages all the time about how safe are you? What should we do? Things are changing. So all of that makes it even more challenging because there's not this set path. Another piece that I think that might be helpful for people to think about is that the world, we're going through something that I think it's David Kessler. He's like this huge researcher with grief. And what he described was just so apt. It's like this weird feeling that we're feeling, like even if we're not totally depressed or completely anxious that we're aware of it, we just feel off. It's collective grief. It's this sense of foreboding that's happening and we don't know when it's going to end. So it's kind of this, they term it like anticipatory grief, because you're anticipating something, but we don't even know what it is. So the brain just knows there's a threat and it's signaling to us, and the world looks different depending on what state people are in. I know earlier when everything was in lockdown, you drive around and it's eerie, right? Restaurants are closed, everyone's wearing masks, and you just feel unsettled. And that feeling, that's collective grief, along with all the things that have had to be canceled that are not going to be replicated: graduations, weddings, numerous things, even hard things like not being able to attend loved ones' funerals. So all of that puts the world in this kind of stage of suffering and grief, and having language around it. What we hope is that helps so that we know. And I think it goes in waves. I don't know how have things been for you? Initially, sometimes people reported not being aware of it because we were kind of in this, like, the brain gets really alarmed and we're in this planning mode. So like we saw people going out and buying tons of toilet paper. It gave the brain something to do. It was like action oriented. Now the toilet paper crisis is over, and we're moving from that to almost like this grief or quarantine fatigue. How's it been for you? How have you experienced that quarantine?
So I think it was interesting for me to hear you talk about some of these common things, because people need to understand that you're not alone in feeling a lot of this. I've definitely felt some of these things. The anxieties, of the ghost town when you go around and it's just like not what you're used to. I felt anxiety of being isolated and then maybe being around people and not knowing what to do, because I've been quarantined for 4 months. I've been working from home. So it's walking the dog and somebody's kind of headed your way, and you kind of feel a little squeamish because you're not used to talking to people for a while.
Right.
And that kind of anxiety and just the foreboding, like you talked about, not really knowing the future, definitely had some anxiety there. So I can see how that's a common occurrence. And I hope for people watching that that you're not alone, that this is something that a lot of people are feeling right now.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't think any of us can be immune to the impact of this in some way. Our lives have changed, and it's unexpected and it's unprecedented for our lifetime, for us to have to go through something like this, at least in the US, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's very interesting seeing the different approaches to it too. A lot of independent minds of trying to go through life, and a lot of people are being more cautionary. I tend to be a little bit more cautionary, so I've been staying at home, wearing the mask when I'm out, and you see just a lot of how the anxiety of that situation plays out. So there's that conflict as well, of two opposing views of what's going on. And what you said earlier about how in the beginning you have something to do, you have a mission, and that's to kind of get yourself ready to change a little bit, work from home, be stocked up. And now that that's simmered out and we're all kind of getting used to it, then you wonder what's next. And that's the kind of the scary part.
Yeah, it is. And that's when it's like the brain just gets very irritable because there's not stimulus, right? Things are getting the same over and over again. We don't have a routine, but we're in the same environment all the time.